Hello, everyone. I'm Mason Beam with the Wise News Network, and with the current state of affairs, whether you're for or against firearm ownership, I'm sure everyone can agree that if you do own one, you need to be a safe and responsible owner. On that subject, we've met with Centurion Concepts' own Scott and Stephen Norton, and today they're going to explain a little bit more about firearm safety to us. Once we wrap up with that, they'll be explaining a little bit about what their business does. So check the description to see the timestamp if you'd like to skip ahead to that. Without further ado, let's go out to the range with Scott and Stephen.
How are you guys doing today?
Doing well.
Doing
Thank
good,
you.
Mason. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. So, as everyone can see, we're at a range. So, what are we going over today, guys?
Well, we just want to get the word out about our company and what we do for the public, civilians. We also train law enforcement and those that may be interested in what we have to offer, but it's mainly for the civilian population when it comes to safety and security and firearms.
And why is firearm safety important?
Well, we believe, I know now, at least in the news, it sounds very cliche, but it's very basic to our country where we live now. It's our Second Amendment rights. Is the right to bear arms. Now, we always make it, we preface every class, no matter if we're teaching concealed carry or doing our safety classes, that we do not teach or instruct individuals and civilian population to kill. We teach them to defend. And so it's other initiated. And so that's a core of what we believe in.
And that leads into my next question. What makes a safe firearm owner?
Well, a safe firearm owner is someone that knows their firearm because there's a lot of different kinds. So they need to know which kind of firearm they have and how it operates, whether there's a safety, whether there's a trigger safety, and they need to know how to store that safe when they have children or juveniles in the home or when they're not around their firearm. And they need to know ideally the four main safety rules by heart and to live by that.
And what are those?
So the first and most important rule is to treat every weapon as if it were loaded. Never point your weapon at anything you do not intend to shoot, to keep your finger straight and off the trigger until you're ready to fire or destroy whatever you're pointing your firearm at, and to know what's beyond your target and what's behind you as well.
What are some ways that the firearm owners can increase just the safety of owning it?
Well, I like to use the analogy, especially when these guys were growing up, that the state of North Carolina has a set of requirements in order to grant anybody in any state a driver's license to operate a motor vehicle. And what that student has to be able to do, first of all, has to have knowledge of the vehicle, needs to have knowledge of traffic laws, what is good protocol. Once they meet that standard and they take the actual written test and then they take the driver's test, then the state of North Carolina will issue them either a permit or a driver's license. I always get a humorous response when I ask those that are taking the class, now when your 16 or 15-year-old received that, did it guarantee that at that point in time that they were good and safe drivers? And there's usually some sort of chuckle, because we were all there, and it's no. So that's when it takes time and experience and training. And so that's, I would say, Mason, is another driving force for what we do. When an individual gets a concealed carry, they've met the requirements of the state of North Carolina to receive that concealed carry. Does it mean that they're necessarily a safe and proficient shooter and gun owner? Not necessarily. And so we're there to help take them to that place where they feel a little bit more confident or a lot more safe and can do it effectively. And I think that's our main goal, and that's what we shoot for.
How can people stay up to date on safety regulation changes in the community going on there?
Well, that's kind of a tricky one. It has to be very intentional. Laws in North Carolina and in the United States change on a yearly to monthly basis, just depending on when voting takes place. So one of the organizations that we are associated with is the USCCA, or United States Concealed Carry Association. and they do a fantastic job on their website of updating state laws and state requirements for concealed carry and for other firearm needs too as well. So that's one place. Social media and the news will oftentimes report on new laws that are transpiring, but the gun owner has to be intentional in searching out that information, and it's unfortunately and fortunately it's their responsibility to keep up with it.
So good owner is an educated owner.
Right.
And one great place that we try to share that is on our social media pages as well. When we know that there's a relevant new information going out that the people need to know about, is we'll share it on our Facebook, Instagram, and other social media pages as well.
So we discussed this a little bit earlier, but what do you guys think of the concept of treat every gun like it's loaded?
Well, it's going to translate, even like some of the firearms that we have here, Steve and I both have checked them, they're both empty. However, closer to you is a laser training pistol. And although the laser itself is not at the intensity that could hurt an individual, it could certainly hurt the eyes if you point it into the eyes. If I treat that gun knowing that it's inert and has no harmful capabilities whatsoever, if I treat it as if it were loaded, even though I know it cannot, then that's going to translate over to when I'm at the range and when I'm at home working with them and cleaning them too as well. So it's getting down to that basics, even when you may know that it has no capabilities of hurting anyone. If you do it now when you're not thinking about it, then when you get into a stressful situation or a little bit more stressful situation, you'll still abide by those rules.
One thing we teach in our basic pistol class is that we teach intentional training will lead to unintentional habits. So that if we teach you now to use that firearm and to point it in a safe direction intentionally, and we train that over and over again, whenever we're not around, or if you need to use that firearm, it'll be a habit because you've trained to do so, is that you will treat it as if it were loaded, just in case someone handed you a firearm to check out, to inspect, there's something going on with it. You know in your mind, this might be loaded. I don't want to point it at anything. I don't want it to accidentally shoot.
Definitely not. And talking from things I have experience with, it seems like the idea of muscle memory with music. Once you've learned it, your body's going to react in that way automatically. Now, how would you guys, which I know you're into this, promote gun safety in your community?
Probably the number one source that we found of information is through social media. And so from time to time through our website, through our social media, we'll throw out a nugget of gun safety, maybe something that someone hasn't thought of before. I've also, being a range safety officer here at Foothills Range, have discovered is that no matter the background and sometimes even the experience that a shooter has, sometimes they can get lax in their safety skills and just need to be reminded. Give you a perfect example. I've never met this person and don't mean to berate them, but the Alec Baldwin situation, which hit the news several months ago last year, in that circumstance, from everything that I can see, at least what's been reported, all four of those range safety general rules were broken all at one time. And as a result, a person lost a life. And then, unfortunately for Mr. Baldwin too, he's going to have to live with that the rest of his life. That really sparks interest in people to want to learn to be more safe. And I hate it that event happens. So we try to preemptively keep that from happening.
What is y'all's approach to gun safety?
Well, that's a good question. I think it's probably a traditional approach to it, that this is a tool and it has purposes, both recreationally. It can teach you a number of things of respecting the tool for what its purpose is, and it does have a purpose, whether it be recreational or protection,
Hunting.
both coming from a law enforcement background and he from a military background. We realized that this tool, if not necessarily used, but used in a sense of show of force, can oftentimes too keep a violent event from happening. I'll give you a very interesting statistic, because we follow the FBI and what law enforcement reports. Around 80% of potential violent encounters that U.S. citizens have in a given year are stopped or halted just by the presenting of a firearm. One didn't necessarily have to be pointed at the aggressor. It didn't even have to be drawn from its holster or wherever it was kept. But the fact that it was seen, it stopped the violent encounter right in its tracks.
So, at Centurion, what do you guys offer to teach the public?
All right, so we have a building block approach. We know that all shooters come from just a wide variety of backgrounds. We have folks, we had a class yesterday where a young lady had never handled a firearm, and so her apprehension level's at one place. Then we have someone who's been hunting all their life and has shot firearms and feels very comfortable with firearms, but they're wanting to get their proficiency to another level. Not necessarily for hunting, although what we do can be utilized in a hunting atmosphere, but we're more self-defense. So we have our concealed carry, North Carolina concealed carry class. It's an 8-hour class that has a written test requirement that a student has to pass, and then a 30-round range course of fire that they have to pass. Then we have our Phase 1 class, and our Phase 1 class is a 4-hour class, and it focuses on safety and marksmanship.
Okay.
And it's mainly for the individual that's a new gun owner, or maybe someone who has developed what we would call bad habits that we try to correct. We don't necessarily put them in a stressful situation, but we try to get their confidence as far as handling it properly, loading it properly, unloading it properly, utilizing it properly and safely. Then we have our Phase 2 class. Our Phase 2 class is an 8-hour class, and we call it our Concealed Carry Confidence course. We run across people on a regular basis, and I don't have the numbers, I would love to have them, of those individuals that get their concealed carry, but they do not practice concealed carry. They have never placed themselves in a position. So we designed this class, it's ran the whole day from the concealed carry position, whether it be standing, sitting in a vehicle, laying prone. It's more stress shooting. An individual comes to this class that already has the basics. They're in a safe and a good place when it comes to marksmanship, but they just haven't been pushed to that next level. And when we're talking about a self-defense situation, it doesn't get a higher level than that when it's a life or death situation. So a person, the first thing that'll take place is they'll lose their dexterity, right? And so they're going to be operating off of habit, muscle memory. So during that class, we try to build some muscle memory, things for them to consider. And then the last half of that class, we utilize a 270-degree shooting simulator that operates off a laser system. It's all indoor. There's no shots that are fired whatsoever, but we can place them in decision-making situations. And we discuss the legal aspect, the tactical aspect, and then the moral aspect of whatever scenario that we've placed them in. That scenario is the place to mess up, so to speak, right?
Gotcha.
It's a place where you can correct and reevaluate how you might handle certain things. And I'm going to let Steve tell you about our Phase 3 class.
So the Phase 3 class is mostly done at nighttime, and that's our Phase 3 Defender course for pistols, which is the nighttime shooting. A lot of people come out here to the range and they shoot at targets, and most of those times those targets aren't even moving. but we like to put people in a little more stressful situation, and we like to do this utilizing flashlights. A lot of people don't shoot and train with flashlights. So we'll come out here to the Foothill Shooting Complex and we'll actually shoot using flashlights, handheld, weapons-mounted lights, to show them how and to use the light as to your advantage, and how it can also be a disadvantage depending on how you're using it.
A lot of folks don't realize, Mason, and this is the one reason why we do this class, the Phase 3 class. FBI statistics showed that around a little bit more than 40% of violent encounters occurred at nighttime. So you have a 4 in 10 chance of having to utilize this tool at nighttime. We tell folks the gun is there to save your life and potentially save the life of your loved ones. The flashlight is there is to help save you from taking innocent lives. So you have to train with it. You have to place yourself in that scenario with it. It is the one area I wish we could fill up more, because I talk to more and more very consistent gun users and concealed carry users. Hey, have you ever trained at nighttime with a flashlight? Probably 9 times out of 10, they said, no, we never have. And they need to.
That's definitely something people should look into, especially with that statistic. Is there anything else you guys would like to add?
So we'll look through these businesses, houses of worships, campuses, and we'll look and show them how they can use their environment to help crime stand out easier. You'll notice more if you use, for example, you use bushes to show that people that are supposed to be there can't go this direction around your business. And that helps that if you see someone on the other side of those bushes, that now stands out in your mind to watch that person. Those are just some examples. So we'll go through and we can do an active shooter training, and we'll show them how to respond and what to do and what to expect in the event of something, not necessarily an active shooter, but something a little more out of the ordinary that doesn't normally happen in businesses. That could be a civil disturbance, a domestic, and let them be, I don't know how to word that, prepared.
Sure. Yeah, we're all about, whenever we do our safety and security training with churches and businesses, we are more preventative than anything. There's just dozens of things that churches and businesses can do to prevent crime from happening. I'll give you one statistic. And I've studied active shooter events that's at least as long as it's been reported on by the FBI since about 1990 until today. And about 4% of the events each year, right at about 4%, occur in houses of worship or religious institutions. So not a really high statistic. Most of them occur in places where there are people, commerce areas, sometimes local businesses, schools, and so forth. So what I tell churches, because out of all of the targets that we look at, whether it be a mall or a medical facility, a hospital, a nursing home, they're the softest target.
Yeah.
One thing that if I could tell any church out there that they could do, that it's not a guarantee, but it would reduce the possibility of a violent event happening, is to have eyes on people as they come into the parking lot. We call them greeters. They're just greeters. They're actually a dual position. They're greeters and they're guardians, right? So they're there to greet people, to come into their place of worship, but they're also there to be very vigilant to guard against that, because unfortunately, there is that 4% out there that wants to do harm to people in their places of worship. So eyes on that person. I'll give you an example. The Nashville shooter, individual went to an educational establishment. I'm not going to say his name. We usually don't like to put that information out there. And killed several individuals. We do know from Nashville police that individual went by another establishment first, but then discovered that the security was too tight, and then went to the secondary location where children lost their lives. So just the very simple thing. So as he was getting to, we do active shooter training, hour long. We share with statistics. We share with information about active shooters that would help a person if they're at Walmart, if they're at Lowe's, if they're at church, if they're at McDonald's. Just very simple things that they can do to increase their survivability through that event. Then we do a walkthrough. Our second level is a walkthrough and then active shooter training that we'll walk through their facility and come back to them with any suggestions that they may have. Some of them are capital improvements. Sometimes it's just flow of traffic. Then the very last thing that we provide is for houses of worship only. And it's called Safety Team Ministry Seminar. And so we do our walkthrough. We do our active shooter training for the entire congregation, and then we spend a whole Saturday with their safety team ministry people, volunteers that wish to become a guardian, not just a greeter, but a guardian, and we try to educate them on how to respond to all emergencies, whether it be medical, fire, acts of violence, weather-related or natural disasters that they can do to help increase the safety and survivability of the congregation itself.
Okay. Well, thank you guys for having me today, and thank you for providing this service to the community.
Glad to. Thank you.
Well, everyone, that's all for today. But if you enjoyed and you want to see more like this, be sure to leave a like to let us know that we're doing good. And if you haven't already, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. If you want to see more from us, be sure to find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and even LinkedIn. But that's not the only place you can find us. Be sure to check out wisenewsnetwork.com for our articles written by Grace Smith. And if you want to give us a story yourself, you can leave it down in the comments anywhere and we'll be sure to get back to you. Or you can email newsdesk@wisenewsnetwork.com. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.